What's up, guys? This is Andy, BC Builds. Had a few people complaining about shaky videos, and I'm sorry. Like you can see, there's a tripod set up. I actually have a few of them. I'm just lazy and pretty busy lately, so going out of my way to actually set up for a video is just, been a pain in the ass. I'm making this video to answer a couple questions, mainly one. One of my viewers, Merle Self, basically commented that he used to tattoo 20 plus years ago, I think he said, and due to an injury to his hand that was pretty bad, he stopped. But now he's getting back into it, just on like practice skin and pig skin and I think fruits and shit like that. And he said back in the day, when he tattooed, everybody really just used skinny grips, which were either really 5/8 or 3/4. He's like, nowadays he sees most of the grips are at least 1 inch and up. And he just wanted to ask why they've gotten bigger and really what the difference is. Back in the day, disposable tubes, weren't really around. They were, but they were extremely fucking expensive and rare to come by. And this is 15 years ago. So 20 years ago, I presume nobody would be able to find them. So most people use steel grips, which would be this, which is reusable that you got to clean, which is a 1-inch grip. But because I don't have anything smaller than a steel, I'll show you with this. This was about the average size of the grips. Back then, this is pretty much what most tattoo artists would use. It'd be a steel grip, but it'd be something around this 5/8 or 3/4. This is the 3/4. And the reasoning for bigger grips is not only comfort, but it's a little more leverage. Back in the day, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years ago, rotaries were around, but they weren't really available and they weren't really up to par as like they are today. Within the last 5 to 8 years, rotaries have really come into their own and they've really boomed and become awesome tattooing machines. Back in the day they were very limited. So probably around like 95% of the tattoo population used coil machines back then. And the problem with coil machines is they're heavy. Beyond the fact that this is a plastic tube, even if it was a metal tube, let's just say it's metal because I don't have a thinner steel one. Using a bigger, heavy coil machine like this is an old Infinite machine. This is one of my color packers. This weighs around 8.5 ounces, which is pretty heavy, especially for long hours. And when you're using a small grip like this, you don't have a lot of leverage. Just go out and, try this. Try to do a tattoo with one of these thin grips and a heavy coil machine. You got a lot less area to hold on to, and because of that, you got to hold your fingers tighter, and it's eventually going to cramp your fingers and your wrist. And so on and so forth. I'm not saying you can't tattoo with smaller grips, and it isn't possible. You just have a little less leverage, opposed to a bigger grip. But the most common size grip is a 1-inch grip now. It's what most artists use. 1 inch and up. Most don't use small grips except for old timers. And the advantage of this, which is a 1-inch grip over the 3/4, it's got a much bigger grip. There's more surface area and it's a better handle. Your fingers aren't so cramped together holding it, and just because it's a bigger, wider grip, you have a little more leverage over the weight of the machine because they're pretty top heavy. And because it's a little more comfortable on your hands, you have a little more leverage. It's going to cause a little less fatigue in your hands. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't matter what size grip you have. Using a big heavy machine all day is going to, it's going to hurt your hands. It's going to make you sore. No matter how long you've been doing it, they're just heavy machines. And the size of the grip you really use is really personal preference. If you're using a heavier coil machine, I recommend at least using a 1-inch grip and up. And if you're using a super heavy coil machine, 9+ ounces and up, I recommend using a steel tube. Not only does it act as a counterweight, because this is, stainless steel, it's got a good amount of weight to it. People would think it would just make the whole setup heavier, which it does, but it kind of acts as a counterbalance. When you're using a disposable tube, such as this, it's extremely light, and all the weight is actually over the top of your hand. There's nothing really counterbalancing it. And beyond that fact, the problem with most tubes today is they're made out of, not that great of plastics and acrylics. And you can see if I shake it up and down, it's actually bending the tube. You can see how easily that bends. The problem with that is the needle is supposed to ride directly from the nipple straight down through the tube when it comes out here. When the machine's running, and if you're moving quick enough and this tube's bending back and forth like such, the needle's actually going to rub and bang against the inside of the tube, causing it to slow down. If the needle's not running at a consistent rate, you're not going to get a consistent line. If you're doing line work, you're not going to get consistent color packing, because it's going to be, this machine will be running faster and harder in this spot, and when the shit's bending, it's going to be running, you know, slower and softer here. So you really got to be careful. It all depends on what kind of tubes you have too. These black disposable grips, which I'm really not a big fan of when I'm using a coil machine, it's just because, I'll show you here, this grip's easier to remove. Basically, these black disposable tubes, all they are is a thin plastic tube with a rubber grip. That's basically just, seeing I broke the thing, that's how flimsy they are. It's been sitting around in a drawer forever, so not all of them are bad like that. Basically, it's just a thin plastic tube with a rubber grip over it. This rubber grip doesn't add any rigidity to it, opposed to these white ones, which obviously they have a hard plastic grip on it, and it's not as comfortable as the rubber, but this plastic grip is basically like plastic welded and fused. So basically, instead of having the whole thing as one big bend and flex point, the only part that actually flex is this back stem right here, and there's not enough of it to actually flex. So I'll load that into the machine, and you can see this bends a whole lot less than the black ones do. These ones are a lot stiffer, hence why I prefer these kind of tubes, and I'm using a disposable tube of this sort. It's just because they're much more rigid. Given I don't like the plastic grip here, and at least with color packing I like a thicker grip. However, remedy that is I actually take paper towels and you fold them over, you know, in thirds, and you wrap them around in rubber band. It creates a softer grip. The rubber bands give you a little grippiness to hold on to, and it's bigger. So you can turn a 1-inch grip into a 1.5 like this. This is usually the size I use for color packing, and then lining would be around 1.25, you know, give or take. I'm really just wrapping Viva paper towels around it, which I prefer. The size you use is really up to you. I don't recommend using a small tube. It's just going to fatigue your hand, and it's harder to get a little leverage over the machine. But also, when it comes to precise line work, a really big 1.5 grip like this, you have a lot of leverage, but you don't have a super level of preciseness. You know, some people prefer it and some people don't. That's why when I line, it's a little smaller. Now, instead of wrapping rubber bands around it, you can go out and buy disposable Gorilla grips. It's basically just foam that you slide over the 1-inch grip and you throw away when you're done. I think they're around 50 cents a piece, which is rather cheap, but I feel it's just a waste of money when you could take a 2-cent paper towel and just wrap it around and rubber band it. I forget who taught me this trick. I learned this early on, learning the tattoo. So, even still, if you're using one of these small grips, you can turn it into a 1-inch grip here. This is a small 3/4 grip, and I just wrapped paper towels around it and rubber bands. You don't have to use rubber bands. You could tape it, you could put medical tape, whatever you use. It just has to be sterile, disposable. This really just gives you the freedom to make the grip whatever size you want. You know, it doesn't have to be within a certain 1-inch, 1.25, 1.5. You could even have a 5-inch grip if you wanted to. It really doesn't matter. And how you do it is really up to your preference. I would like it a little bigger than this normally. But that just saves you, you know, an extra, you know, couple dollars a tattoo, not buying those disposable, the grips that go over it. So Merle, that's really it. It really all is a matter of preference. You know, a smaller grip, you have less leverage and then when you get to a point and it's too big, you're not really as precise. It's a little more clumsy. So I like something that's in between, a little bigger than 1 inch, a little smaller than 1.5. And I know some people that I actually use huge 2-inch grips. Some people prefer just to hold on to the straight steel. This is heavy, but they also make them in aluminum. Don't buy anodized aluminum ones, because when they go in autoclave all the time, they'll eventually blemish. Even my Hummingbird rotary, which is anodized green, it's been in the autoclave enough times just to clean it, even though it's bagged, and you can see some of it starting to actually blemish. Sorry. So that explains the grips. On to the next. Someone was asking me about color blending and how to set up a machine for color blending. And it really is all about your style and preference and how your hand moves and your hand speed. Lately, because my hands have, you know, I have arthritis in my hands, I'm not going to take gloves off because I don't want to make a mess, but you can see the discoloration across my knuckles. A heavier coil machine like this, really, it just wreaks hell on my hands. So I made a conscious decision that I pretty much use 99.9% just rotaries, and to make my life a little easier, I didn't put it on now because I was just showing you guys difference in tubes. I use what is called a Cheyenne needle cartridge. Basically, it's not a conventional long needle, it's just a little cartridge. You can look that up. It just makes for easy exchange. I can use one machine to do everything I usually set up to. It just makes my life a little easier. When it comes to actual preference, I prefer how a coil machine runs, but it really is detrimental to my hands, especially anybody who has problems with their hands and arthritis or previous injuries. I recommend a rotary. The thing I don't like about rotaries is the give systems on it. It's really an artificial give. So what I do most is black and gray, softer black and gray. Hopefully I'll load some video or pictures up into this video for you guys. I don't know if I'll get around to doing it. And I can't find a coil machine or a rotary machine that can run as fast as I would like and keep it as soft. Because even with the give all the way out on this, running it at the speed I usually run it at, it hits a little too hard. So for the last little while now, I've actually been, trying to reteach myself how to do black and gray and all styles, color with just one setting, which is no give. Because there's people out there that use actually Cheyenne machines and direct drive machines that do really smooth black and gray, and instead of having a soft machine, they just have a really soft motion, which makes it a little more difficult, but over the long run it makes things a little more simple. You don't have to fuck with machines. So with my black and gray, I would set the machine all the way out, and lately I've primarily been using Hummingbirds. For big color packing sessions, I have one of the new ones that comes with the Maxon, and for lining in black and gray, I've been using this one here, which is definitely my favorite, my green one. It's the original one. It's still running. It has a few little issues, which are just dumb things. Little things wore out, like a rubber stop in it, so it's loud. But when it comes to different kind of color work, like a traditional color packing where you're just coloring a solid field of color, opposed to like more realistic color blending, which is a lot softer. I'm not going to get into the give on the machine because I've been teaching myself how to do it with just no give, which is possible to do any style like that. You just got to adjust your hand speed. When I go from like packing a solid area to like color blending, I just really now just learn to adjust the speed of the machine. Now this is set on 6 volts now. This has plenty of power at 6 volts. That's what I would set this at for just straight like color packing. And when you're doing like a solid field of color, it's just one color, you want an even saturation, you just go small, precise circles. You see how the machine's on an angle. I'm holding it more towards the back opposed to lining. You would choke up a little bit so it keeps the machine up and down. When you're color packing, you can see my hand sits a little farther back. It basically keeps the machine on a 45-degree angle or somewhere in that range to color pack. But when you're color packing a certain area, you want it just solid color, no other fades. You run the machine a little slower. I did a really shitty job there. I don't have anything to slide my hand down. You want to move your hand with it. When you're color packing, you don't want to take the needle out. You don't want to like fade it up. You want to keep the needle in the skin a consistent depth the whole time. If I'm coloring here, I don't want to lift it out and just color with the tip here. Not just color solid color packing. You want to do small, tight circles and keep it in the skin. And I'm not just moving my fingers outwards like this because that'll change the angle of the needle. I don't have any A&D on it, so it's hard to slide. But you actually want to move your whole hand with it. Use your fingers to create the little circles, but when you're going from side to side, move your hands. Like that. Sorry. Just put some on my hand. I know I put the machine on my lap because my ass. Another little trick so you can slide across the skin is put a little A&D on the bottom of your hand. This is usually what I do. Just make sure, slides a little easier. Not on this foam paper stuff. Kind of sticky. It's a pain in the ass. But that's how you would do more traditional color packing. It's just basically small, consistent, tight little ovals, not circles. Consistent field of color. But when you're doing more style of color blending and more realistic, at least how I do it is I'll turn it up a little bit. You can hear it runs a little faster, which obviously would mean to run a little harder. you can change the give to make it softer, but like I said, I've been trying to do stuff with no give, and it's been working out pretty well. It's a little more complicated for me because I learned with coil machines. But when you're doing more of a color blending style, you more want to scrub it in and go a little lighter. You'll notice that I'm not digging the needle in as deep, and it's moving a little faster, so it's a little faster. When you're scrubbing it in, I still keep it on an angle, not as much, and I choke up a little bit. It's kind of like I do my black and gray. It's just a little softer and a little quicker. You see I'm moving in a more scrubbing back and forth movement like this, which is harder to get consistent coverage, but you want it in there lighter just in case you gotta fade colors. But I'm not just going back and forth like this. If you can see, I'm actually doing it in longer ovals. This shit sucks up ink quick. So I'm still getting the ink in there consistently, but I'm moving a little faster and a little softer. And with a direct drive or something that has no give, if you want to hit it a little lighter, just lift the needle out a little bit. Don't dig it in as much. If I wanted to fade it out into like a lighter purple or a lighter violet, you see towards the end I'm lifting it out. Got to do the same consistent circles, but it's not going to be as saturated there, you know. And it's hard to see on this because this isn't real skin, and it's even hard to see on the skin when you're doing it. You really, you got to give it a minute to set. But opposed to here where I'd want it solid black, I'm scrubbing it for solid purple. Damn, shit eats ink. I pick it up and it's just a little lighter and a little softer. I'm just adjusting my hand motion, a little faster movement, so it's not so saturated. So I could go in and actually mix this purple out with a little white. Shit, I'm getting caught up on this. And I would start a little back, because I did this really soft, so you're not going to overwork it. Slight movements, and when I get to the end of that solid colored purple, you know, fade it in, smooth through here, you know, really soft. When I get out, make it a little deeper so it's saturating this area. But when you're actually blending into an area you already colored, like this darker purple, you want to make sure you're going in soft. Because if you just really dig it into an area you already hit softly, it's going to tear it the fuck up. And then if I wanted to fade into a lighter purple, just a little more white, you know, or you can set up different purples. It's really up to you. You see, I'm not starting right at the edge where I ended that purple because you're going to get choppiness. You know, I faded it out on the end. Really light when you're overlapping it. And then when you get away from where you actually are overlapping, start saturating it a little more. And it's hard to see this. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on the camera, but now it's not really even because I rushed it. But take your time when you're doing this. Learn running your machine slower. Really take your time and just learn the correct way. Don't ever rush through anything. But it all kind of like bled together, so you got to be careful when you're wiping. But I don't have any water on this. You can see I'm going from a solid purple to a medium and a light, which is good. And any kind of tattoo, color, black and gray, you always want to have a dark, medium, and light tone. That'll create contrast. You don't ever want to have anything all in one, you know, the same tone set, all the same colors, all the same mid-tones, or all light tones. You know, I like to do my backgrounds a little darker because it makes the foreground and the actual focus of the piece pop out, and it tells a little more of a story. I love high contrast. And I don't mean just putting solid black in the background, you know, or you could do like waves or whatever the hell you want. It doesn't really matter what you're putting in the background. But even when you do put a solid darker tone in the background that'll make the foreground pop, I don't see a lot of people doing this, but you can mix black with other colors. I love mixing black with a little violet or purple. That's why I brought that out, because it'll be hard to see when you're actually putting it in. Just a little whip shading. By the way, that's how you whip shade. Just kind of in and out. You got to do it really consistently. I like to move fast when I do it. I'm just fucking around with you guys. But you can see it looks more on the black side, but you can see a hue of purple on there. So that'll give you that really nice dark tone for the background, or the shading on the piece. But when it heals, it'll kind of have, it won't just be boring black. It'll have that little purpley tint to it. So don't be afraid to mix your blacks. You don't have to use a solid black. You could use like a 50 or a 75, whatever you feel comfortable with. Mix it with other dark tones and give it a cool little hue. I can't tell you how to do it exactly. Tattooing is really just a learning experience, you got to find clients that are willing to let you experiment. Just remember, when you're experimenting, don't ever go past your abilities. Always push yourself, but it's something that you've never tried before. At least do your homework on it. Don't just go into it willy-nilly. You can also mix black with a little green. Get a little more green. And it gives you this really cool forest black effect. Sorry, this cable's kind of dying on me. You see, when you're cleaning out your colors, don't ever blow into it. You're putting your germs into it. Get a can of compressed air keyboard cleaner to do it, or get a little water, rinse it out, and rub it backwards. Don't ever go forwards like that. You're gonna get shit stuck in the needle and put it in the skin. Always go backwards on parallel. Don't ever dare it like this, just like that. Nice and light. And then you can also get the shit out of there, just that real quick. And when it comes to mixing down colors to make them actually a little bit lighter, you can mix different tones. Like, say you're mixing down a green, you can mix this green with a lighter green. You can mix this green with a white, or you can also mix it with a yellow and give it a lighter, brighter effect. If you mix down green with a little yellow, it's going to give you that brighter tone of green. So I'm just trying to get all the ink out of it real quick. This cable. But if I mix this green down with a little white, it's going to give it a lighter green, but it's not going to be bright. More of a pastel color. And then I can even mix a little green, a little yellow, and a little white to get a lighter green that still has some brightness in it. A brighter pastel color. So the easiest way to learn how to blend your colors is a color wheel. So I actually have this. I was showing somebody the other day. I wrote it down for him. It's basically this, just a few rules of thumb. You guys can pause it and look at it. That's very, it's not very descriptive. You don't have to learn your colors from a tattoo artist. Actually go online and, there's plenty of YouTube painters out there that will teach you your color wheel better than I can. But that's a must. People just go into tattoos and they don't even know what a color wheel is. You really got to know contrasting colors, colors that shouldn't be next to each other, your tertiary colors, the whole 9 yards, what to blend, what not to blend, what not to put directly next to each other. It's basically the fundamentals of art. If you're not an artist at heart and you don't know the basics, then you're never going to be able to become a